The Menendez brothers, Lyle and Erik, have become some of the most talked about figures in American true crime. In 1989, they were convicted of brutally ending the lives of their wealthy parents, José and Kitty Menendez, in their Beverly Hills mansion. The motive, according to prosecutors, greed. But to others, the story runs far deeper, entangled in a web of trauma, silence, and shocking family secrets. This case shocked the nation, but what if what we thought we knew was wrong? In the years following their conviction, the Menendez brothers have remained imprisoned, serving life sentences without the possibility of parole. Yet their case refuses to fade into obscurity. Instead, it continues to provoke debate, attract public fascination, and spark movements online that demand justice. Why? Because new voices and new evidence are emerging. Evidence that could potentially change everything we thought we understood about this family tragedy. The story begins not in court, but in the immaculate halls of a seemingly perfect Beverly Hills home. José Menendez, a powerful entertainment executive, was known for his ambition and strict parenting. Kitty, his wife, was described as elegant but troubled, often overshadowed by her husband's dominant presence. From the outside, their family looked like the American dream. But according to Erik and Lyle, behind those walls lived a nightmare no one could see. During their trial, the defense painted a harrowing portrait of years of abuse, control, and emotional torment. The brothers claimed they were driven to kill, not for inheritance, but out of fear of continued abuse and psychological destruction. These claims were heavily contested and, at the time, dismissed by many as desperate attempts to avoid responsibility. But was there truth buried beneath the scandalous headlines? Recently, fresh attention has been drawn to the Menendez case, not just by the media, but by a younger generation on social platforms. TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram have become hubs of detailed breakdowns, fan theories, and passionate calls for reevaluation. What's particularly interesting is the tone. It's not just sensationalism, it's empathy. Many young people today view Lyle and Erik not just as criminals, but as possible victims failed by the system. What's pushing this narrative even further is a bombshell development involving Roy Rosselló, a former member of the 1980s boy band Menudo. In a 2023 docu-series, Rosselló claimed that he too was abused by none other than José Menendez. This accusation is not just shocking, it's potentially pivotal. If true, it could give weight to the defense's claims that José was not the model father he was once portrayed to be. Rosselló's allegations have reignited interest in the case at an unprecedented scale. The idea that José Menendez may have had a dark side, known only to his children and a few others, suddenly gives the brothers' story a tragic context. More importantly, it raises critical questions. Were the courts too quick to dismiss the abuse narrative? And is it time to take a second look at the evidence with a more informed, modern lens? What makes these revelations so compelling is that they aren't coming from tabloids or anonymous sources. They're from people with first-hand experiences, finally breaking decades of silence. For years, survivors of abuse were often ignored or invalidated, especially when the accused held power. Today, there's a greater cultural understanding of trauma and how it manifests. That shift might be exactly what this case needs to be seen in a new light. It's also worth noting that the Menendez brothers never stopped telling their story. In interviews from prison, they've maintained their version of events with remarkable consistency. Despite being separated in different facilities, they've both expressed remorse, explained their pain, and pleaded for understanding. Whether you believe them or not, the fact that they haven't wavered after decades behind bars is something that demands attention. The calls for justice are getting louder. Online petitions, documentaries, and legal experts are joining the chorus, asking, should this case be reopened? Could the Menendez brothers deserve a new trial? or at least a reconsideration of their sentence. It's not about excusing a horrific act, but about understanding what drove it, and whether society failed to protect two boys who were, as they claim, pushed to the brink. When Roy Rosselló came forward, it wasn't just another headline. It was a seismic shift. His testimony detailed how José Menendez allegedly abused him when he was just a young teen under the wing of powerful men in the entertainment industry. Rosselló's story echoed the trauma described by Erik and Lyle: manipulation, control, and exploitation under the guise of mentorship. This wasn't simply a story about the Menendez family anymore. This was about a broader culture of silence, intimidation, and abuse within elite circles. If José had the capacity to harm someone outside his family, what did that say about the stories his sons told over 30 years ago? The prosecution during the Menendez trial was laser-focused on the money. After all, the brothers had gone on shopping sprees just days after the murders, spending thousands on Rolex watches, cars, and designer clothes. It seemed like open and shut greed, but trauma responses aren't always rational. Experts today argue that victims of long-term abuse can behave erratically after breaking free, whether that means isolation, overcompensation, or even self-destruction. Could Lyle and Erik's post-crime behavior have been misinterpreted not as arrogance, but as shock and disorientation? Another overlooked aspect is the court's handling of mental health during the original trial. In the early 90s, psychological trauma, especially in young men, was stigmatized and misunderstood. The Menendez defense tried to introduce testimony from psychologists who evaluated the brothers, but much of their input was minimized or challenged. Today, mental health professionals view the case with fresh eyes, suggesting that the boys may have suffered from complex PTSD, a condition common in long-term abuse survivors. And yet, back then, their emotional breakdowns were labeled as theatrics. Over the years, dozens of letters written by the Menendez brothers from prison have surfaced, some addressed to supporters, others to journalists, and many exchanged between the brothers themselves. In them, they reflect on their upbringing, their crimes, and their regret. There's a clear shift in tone from early defiance to introspection and acceptance. They don't deny what they did, but they constantly ask one question: why did no one stop it before it escalated to tragedy? That question haunts not only them, but also those who now look at this case with renewed interest. There's also the matter of the trial being televised, one of the first criminal cases in the U.S. to be broadcast wall-to-wall. The Menendez brothers became celebrities overnight, and the trial was consumed like entertainment. This media circus shaped public opinion long before a verdict was reached. Prosecutors, defense lawyers, and even the judge were keenly aware of the cameras. The result? A courtroom not just focused on justice, but on performance. Can we really say that a fair and balanced trial took place when ratings and headlines were part of the equation? Recently, a growing number of legal analysts and activists have begun to compare the Menendez case to other infamous trials where abuse was central, like the Turpin children or the Gabriel Fernandez tragedy. In those cases, the signs were ignored until it was too late, and when they surfaced, the public was horrified by how easily such violence could be hidden in plain sight. Could Lyle and Erik have been another warning sign ignored? If so, their actions, however horrifying, might be seen as the final desperate attempt to escape. Let's not forget, they were just 21 and 18 when the murders happened, barely adults, and while that doesn't excuse what they did, it contextualizes it. At that age, shaped by years of fear and trauma, the line between victim and perpetrator can blur. For decades, their youth and vulnerability were overlooked. But now, in an age where we better understand generational trauma and abuse dynamics, there's a willingness to revisit what seemed black and white in 1989. Because in truth, very little about this story is that simple. Documentaries like Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed, and Netflix's true crime coverage have reignited the fire. New forensic analyses, expert interviews, and first-hand accounts are being pieced together like a puzzle that was never quite complete. As each new layer is revealed, one thing becomes painfully clear: the justice system may have rushed to paint a narrative without fully listening. And that rush may have cost two young men their freedom, perhaps unjustly. Whether you believe they were abused or not, the new evidence raises undeniable questions. Why were certain witnesses not allowed to testify? Why were some psychologists dismissed or ignored? Why did the media play such a dominant role in shaping perception? And if society failed to fully investigate these elements, isn't it our responsibility to correct that failure now? Justice doesn't end with a verdict. It evolves with time, knowledge, and courage to face uncomfortable truths. If you're still watching at this point, thank you. This story is more than a headline. It's a mirror held up to the justice system, to media influence, and to the way we treat victims who don't fit into easy boxes. The Menendez brothers committed a terrible crime. But was it the act of monsters or of broken boys crying out for help? I don't have the answer, but I do believe this: they deserve to be heard again. And if this video has opened your eyes, share it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more deep dives like this, because the truth has layers, and sometimes justice takes a second look. And that's it for today's deep dive. What do you think? Do Erik and Lyle Menendez deserve a second chance, or is justice already served? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear from you. And if you found this case as fascinating and disturbing as I did, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and tells the algorithm, hey, more people need to see this. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we dig into cases like this every single week. Stories that shake you, puzzle you, and make you question everything. And hey, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Until then, stay curious and stay safe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.